The gun. Don't underestimate the gun. How it scares us even now. We won't even walk our streets at night. That same gun came to a people who were basically farmers and fishers. We didn't have mighty armies. That's a myth. All right? That would come later, and when we began to try to defend ourselves against the Muslim world and defend ourselves against the Christian world, then we began to develop these big armies. But we never had gun technology, and it put us in a disadvantaged position. But there's a battle called the Battle of Islamabad, I think it's Islamabad in South Africa, when the brother whose name we don't call very much, he was one of those kings. His name was Setuweya. Okay, Setuweya wiped out 2,000 Brits in one day with his bows and arrows and his spears. Okay. And it caused, who was the Prime Minister of Britain? It caused his government in Britain to tumble. Okay. I forget, there's a very famous guy. And that's just one battle. If we go to Muhammad Ahmed in the Sudan, Muhammad Ahmed, at the time of the Berlin Conference, took his army against the British and in one day killed 10,000 with bows and arrows against guns. They weren't able to defeat him until they brought the repeating rifle and brought General Kitchener. He killed General Gordon, cut his head off, hooped that, sent it back up to Cairo. And then they brought General Kitchener out of China and tripled their armies and came in with these high-tech methods and the beginning of the Gatling gun, and they were able to defeat us. It was the Gatling gun that defeated the Zulu, because the Zulu weren't going to allow them to take one enslaved person. But when you have a machine that can kill 1,000 people a minute, you got to back up and ask some questions. Don't talk about people being cowards.
This morning, in talking to him, it appears he's been exposed to a lot of Dr. Henry Louis Gates' work.
And skip the truth gates.
Skip the truth gates. Right. And I pointed him to the article from Dr. Molefi Kete Asante. Now, he didn't know who Dr. Molefi Kete Asante was. And I said, well, that's part of your problem right there.
Exactly.
That's one of our greatest African-centered scholars. Prolific writer, written dozens of, I think something like 400 articles, written dozens of books. I pointed him to an article that Dr. Asante wrote a few years ago called Henry Louis Gates Jr. is Wrong About the African Involvement in the Slave Trade. Because this was written in direct response to Dr. Gates' op-ed article in the New York Times called Ending the Slavery Blame Game, where he basically blamed Africans for the majority of the slave trade. And this is an attempt to get the European government, get the white government off the hook for paying reparations. Okay, this is what this is about. So when he was backed heavily by Bank of America to make African American rivers, many rivers to cross, African Americans, many rivers to cross, that six installment series for PBS. It was heavily backed by Bank of America. The first installment, I talked with Dr. Jeffries, and now one of my teachers, Dr. Linda Jeffries as well. We did a radio show together, 2 shows that dealt with some of the historical inaccuracies in the first installment. First of all, he talked about the Haitian Revolution, didn't mention Bookman, Dala, Dessalines, Toussaint Louverture. He talked about the first known African coming to this country in 1513, Juan Dorito, but he didn't ever talk about the fact that Africans had been here for tens of thousands of years, and we were here first. Okay, and then he goes into West Africa, and then he tries to blame the Africans, put the majority of the blame on African people for the slave trade. So this is the game that Skip the Truth Gates plays. But go ahead with the next question. Yeah, go ahead.
It's on that side.
Go to this side right there. Sorry.
Well, my name is Douglas. I live in Belleville, Michigan, and I'm interested. Is there a bank in Detroit? The Black Credit Union,
First Independent,
that we can begin channeling our money. I'm willing to drive.
We have 2 black banks.
The distance.
We have 2, First Independence Bank and Liberty Bank. We have 2 African American owned banks. First Independence has 3 locations. If they haven't moved from downtown Detroit and Griswold, they just moved there. They're in the New Center area.
On the block.
You can go to their website, Google them, First Independence Bank, and then also Liberty Bank. We have 2 African American owned banks here in Detroit.
Thank you, sir.
Now, credit unions, I'm not sure, but you can start with the banks. Bobby Gibson.
Yes, I thank you for taking my question. I did the review of the Educator School, and it came to the commandment number 2, thou shalt rewrite the history of Illinois people.
Yeah.
And so what you alluded to earlier, what we had done here, with the African-centered movement. But now we're at a point where they're trying to completely decimate it out.
Right.
Now, all these people you see here, I don't even think they even know who they're voting for the quote-unquote school board. But let me give you a quick history real quick. That school board that has been fighting and fighting to keep them from taking over your schools.
Teach.
And now the game, since they could not get them out legally, now the game is, let's vote them out and get some black people to put them in there in that place, and then we can do our scam without the fighting back.
Right.
So the question becomes this: how do we get and educate our people to understand that everything that they give us as leaders should be rejected out here? It should be rejected. So anybody there pushing for the Detroit School Board, you all should just look at that right now and just jump. We got 72 people running for a school board that has no money. They don't get paid a dime. And where were they the last 19 years since the day?
That's right.
Where are these same folk who now coming to help us educate our children? Because what this brother just went through is the idea that he wasn't educated properly. So my question is, how can we make sure that we continue what we've started, even though they're dismantling? And yeah, we can do the homeschool and all that kind of thing.
You finish your question now.
I'm not finished. I'm not going to.
All right. And Michael can take it. I'll just start. My starting would be, I agree with you that you have to scrutinize who's running for any office in your community.
That's right.
And you have to come up with some way of judging their service to the community before they decide to take this position. And then let's look back and listen to the people who are in there. They have a track record. Look at their track record.
That's right.
Were they trying to present things to you and your children that you need and want and think is appropriate? And it's always suspect when white folks want to remove black folks from something.
That's right.
Very quickly, first and foremost, we have to teach the history of the African-centered school movement here in Detroit. And teach the history of why the first emergency manager was put over the schools, okay, to get control of the $1.5 billion bond, all right, because too many contracts were going to African-American vendors, okay, this is why. So you have white vendors who historically got contracts, they got mad, they went to the governor, next thing you know, they're putting emergency manager over Detroit Public Schools. It wasn't because of test scores, it wasn't because of the budget. We had a $100 million budget surplus. You had other school districts that were much worse off than DPS. They didn't take those over. So first we have to deal with that history. Why, and how the African-centered school movement was so powerful and how it was making a difference, okay? Because a lot of people don't understand that history, all right? And we have to deal with that and then go from there. And also we have to understand that we have to educate, even if you send your children to a traditional school, every home has to have an education center. So we have entertainment centers. We have to have the education centers. We have the DVDs, we have the books, we have the atlas, the globe, the almanac, things like this. So that we teach the children at home in the evening and especially on the weekends. When you go to the Asian communities, like in California, I saw recently, on Saturday, the Asian students go to a cultural school. They may go to a traditional school, but on Saturday they go to a cultural school, and other people do this also. So we have to learn from that and incorporate those things also. All right, next question.
Peace and blessings to the brothers up there, and peace and blessings to all my brothers and sisters in here today. I'm sorry. I got one question. I want to know, what do you think the importance of nationalism is in our community?
Well, I'll do it real quick. Keep it simple. Nationalism means you want to own where you live. Malcolm said he was a black nationalist freedom fighter, and then he said black nationalism means I own the stores, I run the schools, I own the real estate, and I control the police. So when you nationalize something, you take control over it. So nationalism means I want control over where I live. And that's what I was talking about: food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. You gotta control economic, politics, and culture. To have a community, you gotta own the real estate, you gotta own the retail and wholesale business, and you gotta control your police, fire, and schools. That's nationalism.
That's it. Big that.
Right. And I definitely agree with that, and I like the way Malcolm talked about black nationalism. And he also talked about when he left the Nation of Islam March 8th, 1964 officially. Well, after he leaves the Nation of Islam, he talks about how separating from America and having our own nation, how that's a longer term goal. He talks about immediate goals that we have now that we have to meet. owning the businesses in our community, things like this.
So both of us gonna get shorter than we are.
Well, go ahead,
15
go
minutes.
ahead.
I just want to make one statement, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I just want to make one statement. This program ends at 9 o'clock. So those who are unable to answer questions because of time is stopped, I'm just giving you early notice.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask everyone to keep their questions very short, concise. I'm asking panelists to do so as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you think that Colin Kaepernick has given us an opportunity that a black person of note can state publicly that from this day forward, every black athlete entering into professional sports must have a black manager and a black agent, period? And if the black professional sports person just asked his white counterpart, do you have a black manager or agent? I'm sure none of the white professional athletes have a black manager or agent. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think that should be the position of the black athlete. Because that is the position of white athletes and that is the position of Asian athletes.
Right.
And that should be the position of black athletes. Because there's no justification why black athletes making these millions and millions of dollars is giving it to white agents and managers who's then directing those millions and millions of dollars to invest in white enterprise and white charities.
All right, next question.
I came late. All I saw was Dr. Small. Missed you. I missed the movie. Apologies. My question, that's a three-part question. I don't want to get too off
We
base.
got 10 minutes, so you can.
Right. So, but it's about the vendor. What's the
One question.
what's the
One question.
what's your knowledge on the Bible? From my research, is basically a book of astrology. When you talk about certain scriptures, in my house there are many mansions. Is he talking about aliens? And you talking about Ezekiel went away in a chariot of fire? What is that other than a spaceship that they couldn't describe other than that?
Okay, we got 10 minutes of that. Thank you. That's the Bible, and it has a lot of astrology. Astrology, remember, is one of the spiritual sciences that we develop in chemists. And it deals a lot with astrology, but it also deals with astronomy, and it deals with other sciences. I'll give you a quick one. The Last Supper. You have 12 people sitting at a table. 13 people, right?
13 people.
Right. And the center of the table is the Christ figure, and it has a light around his head, which suggests that his brain is the sun, and that light that's emanating from the sun is and the light you see, the halo, is the emanation from the sun. Around the sun is what is the 12 months. And if you look at the people in the painting, they're broken into 4 groups of threes. It's 4 groups of threes. So there you're watching the 4 seasons and the 12 months evolving around the sun. And there's even more in that painting, but just that one painting alone will tell you that they're talking about astrology and they're talking about the solar drama. But what all of the religious document is trying to do is interpret nature and cosmology to humanity and describe what human relationships should be to the rest of nature and to cosmology. And what our interpretation of that is, what you see in the Bible and other holy books is the mythologies we use to teach something that would take 10,000 books to write down.
All right, my name's Anita Bell. I'm with the Reparations Movement. And my question has to do with...
Speak more directly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
All right. My question has more to do with how do we repair our melanin, that pineal melanin, that seems to be, you were talking about the God within us, both male and female. And how do we repair that melanin in our pineal glands so that we can relate to the God within us?
I was gonna defer that one to you.
Okay.
That would have been a